And I'm Dr. Robert Maldonado, and I'm here with my lovely wife and co-partner and
Co-partner.
in everything we do,
Yes.
Deborah Maldonado. So today we wanted to talk about romantic love, which is really our specialty. You
Yes.
wrote a book on it. You're writing another book on it. You have tons of experience.
Mm.
Um, my interest has been really on kind of exploring the theme a little bit of of what is romantic love from the
Psychologically,
psychological
spiritual.
perspective, from the spiritual perspective.
Mm.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about romantic love in the context of people's spiritual journey,
Mm-hmm.
not religion. We're not talking about religion. We're talking about people's individual spiritual journeys and how love plays into all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to start off with just saying that, when I first started my spiritual journey, it was driven by my desire for
mm,
love. I was trying to figure out why I wasn't getting married. I was 23 years old, and every single one of my friends was married that year, like 5 people. I caught every bouquet
mm,
and no husband. I went to every wedding alone, and I just felt like, why is it so easy for everyone else and why not me? So my friend handed me the book by Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. I actually dated her brother, and she said, you need to start
mm.
working on yourself, because her brother was kind of a bad news. And that's when I started my journey. And so if I didn't have this desire for love, um, I wouldn't have probably had, a need to seek spiritual knowledge. And so I think a lot of us, that's really where it starts, is that desire for love. And then we're seeking spiritual knowledge to help us find love. But what we're talking about here is that can sometimes lead us to using spiritual knowledge to get a material thing and putting the man or the money or whatever we want in life above our spiritual journey.
Yeah. And, when we started talking about coaching and this question of love,
Mm-hmm.
we knew, for example, that there was a there was a big gap in the literature as to what is love, what is the psychology of it, which is ridiculous because if you think about human history, it's always been love is
Mm.
one of those universal questions that we have to answer.
Yeah.
Life
Well,
is going to
since the 12th
pose.
century, when they started doing the
Well,
nights
I
and
think that's a misconception.
you think,
Yeah, I think it's a very Western idea that we invented love in
the
Europe
Western world.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, romantic love.
with the troubadours and all.
Yeah.
Yeah, but look at Rumi's
Yeah, that's true.
work. He was in the 12th century, I think.
Mm.
He was writing already about this incredible romantic love. So I think it's just the way we define it, perhaps, like you
Yes.
say, that we define it as love. This romantic love should lead to marriage and kids
Mm-hmm.
and kind of in that context. But the if you look at all history, all the world, it's always been a universal question. Like the other universal is, what are you going to do about work? Like,
Mm.
what is your purpose here?
Mm-hmm.
And work and love, like Freud said, are the two primary things that we have to come to terms with.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's okay if somebody says, well, I'm single and I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
If that's a choice, great. But if we know that a lot of people are choosing that
As a
because,
defense, almost.
yeah, it's almost like a defense, or the psychology of love is not there, and they think, well, it's just too difficult.
I don't need it anyway.
Yeah, or I seem to have bad luck. I'm
Yeah.
meant to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
And,
And so we decide to make a choice that I don't want to pursue love because
yes.
it's not happening. And then you kind of reclaim your power in a
Mhm.
way. But it's more of the ego returning to safety versus actually truly feeling powerful.
Yes. And so when we started talking about this and
Mm.
how it had played out up to this point in history, we saw that there was no real psychology
Mm.
for the ordinary person.
Yeah.
A lot of it was therapy, like fixing after things go bad,
Couples
couples
therapy,
therapy, family
match up
therapy.
by randomness, and then let's fix your childhood issues after the fact.
Yes. But nothing to really help us. I mean, if you think about work, like we spent 12 years in school as
Mm.
children, getting trained to be workers or to do something with our lives. Not almost nothing on what do I do about love?
And not even on just love in general, but socially, like, how do we behave? How do we have confidence? All those things aren't taught in school. It's really driven to work. So we get thrust into this world thinking that, you're gonna randomly meet someone, you're gonna fall in love, and it's this magical thing that happens that it's like a almost a lottery, like, "Oh, you won." And then you fall in love, and then this is fairy tale, and then you get married and have kids, and you get the house,
Mm.
and everything's beautiful on the outside, and inside people are just, who did I pick and why am I here? And especially now people are probably thinking, wow, I'm really getting to know this person because we're isolated together. And really I
Yeah.
think that and then the people that get lost out of that lottery, this love lottery, like I felt like my friends all were lucky in love, and I was like, well, I must be lucky at cards because I'm not lucky in
Mm.
love. I always felt unlucky in love. And I felt like it's just a matter of time when everything, the stars will align. I had my astrology done 50 million times and psychics telling me, when is it going to happen? So I really didn't have anything to work with except for the fact that like the therapy books were telling me I was codependent, and oh, that's the problem. So I have to work on fixing my codependency, and then maybe then I'll fall in
Yes.
love. And so then it started getting into this whole idea that something's wrong with me, and that's why I don't have love in my life. And if I was okay and normal, then I would have love, and I just have to get to normal. And I think that's what really, I think, was a kind of it worked against me in my search, because I felt like already coming from this place of a deficit, that I had some kind of lack or deficit that I had to overcome before I found love. And I see a lot of
Yeah.
my clients
There's
before they
definitely
find me, they get frustrated with the whole process of what's available.
yeah, there's definitely like a tendency in the West to pathologize or to medicalize everything.
Mhm.
Not childbirth, for example, it's
Mm.
medicalized. So there was this when we started, I guess around 2010, around there.
Mhm.
We certainly saw this idea in the culture that our parents had screwed us up somehow,
Mm.
and that we all needed therapy. We all needed something to fix us because we were messed up.
Mhm.
And we see a lot of coaches use like addiction models in
Mhm.
their work. There's nothing wrong with that. It is helpful. Anything that helps us understand the mind and the emotions and working with our own psychology is good. We saw that Jung's model was really
Mhm.
interesting. I mean, he started out
Carl
with
Jung, if people don't know
yeah,
who he is.
yeah. Carl Jung. He worked along with Freud back in the early turn of the century. Still very famous. Still widely read. Still taught in every psychology class in
Mhm.
all over the world. But anyway, he came up with these ideas of logos and eros. So logos and eros, uh, Greek gods, right? Greek concepts, philosophical concepts. So eros is the emotional aspect of our life,
Mhm.
the passion, the emotions, the dreams, the instinctual drives that we have towards each other, kind of that primal attraction that's there. Logos, he said, is the masculine element of the mind,
Mhm.
divine logic, right? We're trying to think. We can solve problems through our thinking, through our rational understanding. And he says these two opposing forces are always kind of in that interplay,
Mhm.
including in men and women,
Mhm.
or in
And men are typically labeled as the logical ones, and the women are emotional, but that's not always the case.
Not always the case
And that
because
men are just as emotional as women. That's the
right,
misconception.
because I wanted to ask you about this. He then goes into those two concepts becoming the anima and animus
Mhm.
in human beings and especially in human relations.
Mm. So what did you wanna ask me?
So that interplay of like you were saying, it's not that logic is specific to men,
Mm.
but women in their internal
Mhm.
psyche, they're actually having to get in touch with that logos, with the
Yes.
animus in them.
So, yeah, what I see is that we both, men and women, both have the logos and the eros. For women, the eros is conscious, so we're very soulful, we're very emotional, generally we're conditioned, we're socialized to be. It's okay to show emotions. It's okay to,
Mm,
a little girl cries and everyone wants to cuddle her. A little boy cries and he's labeled as weak and be a man. And so men, they are just as emotional as women, but they're socialized or conditioned to create the persona of the logical, rational person, and the woman is socialized to be the romantic, the one who with the heart and the soul. And what happens is that when we meet romantically, we are seeking that other side of ourselves that's been repressed. So for a woman, she's drawn to a man. She's turned off by a man who's too emotional because she's not in touch. She's seeking that rational side of herself. And a man is looking for that emotion. He's
mm,
looking for the emotion in a woman. So when we come together, it really is more of a spiritual connection because the man is looking for his own soul.
mm,
And conditioned as a human man, he's denied his soul. He's told to think logically, think rationally, do something less creative. Like men aren't driven to do the creative work or, play with dolls or art. He's, the trucks and that kind of do math. And women are actually discouraged from doing math. And they're encouraged to do like the softer skills and be teachers and nurses and socially be a mother, raise yourself raise a family. And so we're cut off from the other part of ourselves, and this society doesn't give us permission. So the romantic love is a way for us to connect. But what we forget is that that's what um that it's really in us that we're seeing in the other person, the projection. And so the journey to romantic love is really a spiritual journey. It really is finding the missing aspects of ourselves through connecting with another. And
mm.
sometimes it's the things that we don't like about ourselves, that we deny about ourselves, or also the things that we adore, like the divine in us. We see in that partner, and the both people project the divine self onto the partner and don't realize it, and then they confuse it to be this human love thing that person owns, that magic that we don't have inside ourselves. And so really the true spiritual journey in Jung's work is to find that completion within ourselves, and we can do it through other people, but we're doing it in a conscious way.
Right.
Is that what you were asking?
Right,
Or
because uh like we were talking about, there's this pathologizing, right?
Mhm.
This kind of idea that we're wounded somehow, that we're broken, and that we need fixing. And when you started to teach me about relationships, the idea was not that there's anything to fix, or like there's not this wound that's stopping you from being able to give and receive love, but that it's more an internal understanding of your own projections.
yes. So what we talked about is that a lot of times people will tell us, this isn't showing up.
Mm.
I just got a post today from in one of our groups. One of our clients is dating online, and she said, "When I put the sexy pictures up, I get scary men, and when I put the motherly pictures up, I get boring guys." And I said, "It's in your mind. It's in your mind." And so we want to really say what we're seeing out there through dating and relating. There's something about our judgment about those things about us that we're seeing show up out there. And one main questions we ask, um, we get asked a lot is, okay, I'm at this workshop, I'm doing this work, I'm in this group, I'm growing myself. Uh, where are all the guys? And I keep meeting men that aren't evolved, and I'm afraid to keep growing because I'm going to not have, there aren't going to be any, there's nothing left in the
The
dating
pool of
pool.
men is going to
Yeah,
shrink.
the pool of men is going to shrink. And so again, it's coming from that is that we have to have that understanding that we're seeing our own projection in relationships. There's nothing outside of it. So you can argue that, oh, well, there's more men in Colorado than there are in New York City. It's true. There actually are physically more women, single women in New York City and there's more single men in Denver. So when I moved to Denver, I was like, yeah, we're going to meet someone. It didn't change because I was still me, seeing the same projection, seeing the same reflection back.
Well, we know in neuroscience that the brain operates on that principle that whatever we expect to see, our assumptions of what is real and what we can expect when we take an action, that's what we see.
Mhm.
Our mind kind of selects. It has a confirmation bias, and so, like you were saying, your friend there saying, every time I put a sexy picture up, I get these creeps or something like that. Well, that's probably what she's expecting to see, right?
Yeah,
And
or this,
therefore,
and it's not even conscious. That's the key,
mm,
is that a lot of people say, I know my patterns. I know, I'm insecure. I know you tend to have these problems with boundaries. You can know everything on the conscious level, but the unconscious is really where the magic happens. And so we have an unconscious. So when we have that experience, we have to say to ourselves, well, what am I assuming about being sexy? What is that? What does that mean? Is that only creeps like sexy people? Or when I'm sexy, it's not safe.
mm,
Whatever that is, you have to go deeper into that. And so if I look normal, no man will or this it's kind of like these two sides of the coin. If you're too just conservative looking, no guy will look at you. Right. So there's that, if no guy will look at me, I have to be sexy. And then there's that resentment. And then
mm.
see, look, I look sexy and then I get creeps. So you feel this kind of powerlessness of the unconscious assumption on the core of it is, I don't get what I want. What I want isn't out there. And so if you have that assumption, guess what you see?
So how would you work with somebody like that? So she's seeing her own projection, let's say her own unconscious assumptions about what's going on in the dating apps and all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing is that there are so many people. I've seen dating coaches talk about this a lot of like, there's an independent reality and keep away from toxic people and keep your boundaries. And it's all this behavior stuff. But the way we see the world is that, or the way Jung saw it, is that everything in psychology, we see it's a projection and that we're kind of seeing our mind
Mm,
everywhere we do. So you have to, first of all, understand that. And the second of all is you really can't see the unconscious. You can't
mm,
go in and, when I was a hypnotherapist, it was like, oh, I'm going to rewire my subconscious thoughts. Well, you don't know what they are because they're not conscious. So how do you know what you're rewiring? So here's a really easy tip. You have to see your response to the results. This, it's not the response itself, because a lot of times we just jump to a conclusion like, oh, I must be believing creepy guys are out there. That's like too easy. We have to look at, what's my response to that result? What's the emotion? And what is the story that's arising? And then we go
mm,
deeper into it. Well, why do I have that story? What do I really believe? And you can actually it's called reverse engineer, and you start going backwards and say, oh, this is what I'm believing. And we see the same thing with spiritual people. And another one too: is it's not only what people get in dating,
Mm.
like their personal response, but what their friends tell them. When I was single, all my friends told me, Debbie, why do you need a spiritual guy? There aren't many spiritual guys out there. You're not gonna, you're being too picky. And so your friends will actually show you your mind as well. What they tell you
Totally.
about the world, you think, well, Mary is telling me that there aren't spiritual guys out there. No, that's you believing it. That's what you believe on some level, if you agree with her. If you're kind of like, well, I kind of, or you're triggered by that. So we use what the feedback we're getting on our journey to understand ourselves. So the goal isn't, how do I clear and make myself whole? I mean, well, you want to make yourself whole, but how do I fix myself so I can get the man? It's more like, how can I use my desire for love and the path of dating and relating and working through my fears to become more of who I am. And through that, if you make the goal the spiritual journey, using dating or search for love as a spiritual journey, then you will get, first of all, you will have enlightenment, you will feel more free, and you'll also get a great partner, because you need to grow into become your true self in order to find true love. And Jung says, if you don't know who you are, the universe doesn't know who to match you up with. Or I think you said that, but it's that if you don't know who you are, the world will tell you. And so you're going to keep seeing that reflection back. And I tell you, this is the hardest, most difficult, arduous part of the work, is to take responsibility for your experience and say, this is showing me my mind, without beating ourselves up, without blaming ourselves and feeling we
Mm.
did it wrong, but to take an honest look and go, this is information. I'm getting information. This is my teacher. I love that idea. This is my teacher right now. I'm triggered. This is showing up for me. This is my teacher. And in that, imagine how the search for love will change for you, because you're not going, get out of the way. I got to make it easy. And when it's hard, I feel bad. And when it's flowing, when the guy calls, I'm happy. You're still attached. But if you say, every challenge is going to help me grow, and every time I grow, I'm closer to that, what I really want, that will make you go out online. Oh, I tell a lot of my clients, they don't really want to date online. I said, I want you to date online, and I want you to take away the idea that you're going to meet someone, and I want to use it purely for your own self-awareness.
Mm.
And then they go online and then they meet people because they're not attached. They're like, I'm using it. Because if you're not taking any action and you're not moving toward your goal, you can't see what's stopping you. So
Yeah.
that's the journey is to find those, like Rumi says, your journey isn't to seek for love, but find all the obstacles that are in the way. And if you can't see obstacles, if you're not doing anything, if you're not moving toward it, but you have to move it toward it
Mm.
without with the intention that you're going to experience obstacles, and those obstacles are your teachers, versus how can I get the easy quick fix, how can I tap away my emotions and clear the energy and raise my vibration so I can magically find love. That's the ego's journey, and you're going to end up not growing. You're going to end up bypassing. It's called spiritual bypassing. That you're going to end up with the same pattern. You may meet someone, and he may have this magical quality, but it's
Uh,
ego.
So I have a test for you.
Oh, a test. Okay.
See if you can tell me where this is from.
Yeah.
So it says, yours is the light by which my spirit is born. Yours is the darkness of my soul's return. You are my sun, my moon, and all my stars.
Did you write that for me?
How'd you know?
Rumi?
Nope. Close.
Tagore?
E. E. Cummings.
Ooh.
A lot of people think it's Drago to singing it to Khaleesi
Oh,
from
yeah.
the Game of Thrones
Oh,
stuff.
yeah. Could you read that again? Now that I know it's Khaleesi.
No, it's not. It's
I
E. Cummings.
but that's where he got they got it from
That's
probably.
yeah, that's probably where the writer got it from.
Yours is the light by which my spirit's born is born. Yours is the darkness of my soul return. You are my sun, my moon, and all my stars. Oh.
So we know that there's these mystical elements in love that have been there for forever, pretty
Mm,
much. And the poet, Freud himself said, "Everywhere I go in my psychology, the poets have been there before
mm.
me." A lot of the ideas that he generated, and including Jung, came from poetry, from literature, from mythology. So the question would be like, what does spirituality have to do with love, right? Because you're
Mm.
talking about this dating and these behaviors and these projections. What is the spiritual element in all this this love stuff?
And the spiritual element is that when you truly fall in love, not the human romantic love, that's kind of it gives you it's almost like a glimpse of it, the taste of immortality, the little sip of immortality is when you're truly in love from your higher self. It is feels like you're connected to the universe. And a lot of people ask, like, how did you know Rob was the one? And I always say, because I felt like I was home. Like there was like a feeling of familiarity and it was a calm. It wasn't this, oh, I mean, we had that too, but it was underneath it. It felt like there was a foundation that could not be broken. And it was not that was in, it was like almost like we were unconsciously, I was connecting to something much deeper in myself. Not that you brought that to me, but you helped me see the deeper home within myself. And can you imagine? That's a beautiful journey to be on with someone is to not feel like, and we used to always too, it was so intense when we met that we used to say to me all the time, I love that I created you. Like this kind of, we kept reminding
Hmm.
ourselves in the beginning that this is a projection, like what the romantic part, and that we're seeing each other ourselves in each other. And because then you don't get lost in it. You don't get like where the neediness and they're disconnected, but you could still have all the human experiences of romance and the poems that you wrote to me and the romanticism. But it feels, have you, a lot of people said to me when I first met you, you gave me this wonderful poem. And my one girlfriend was a friend of my roommate. She said, "Oh my God, if I got a poem from a guy, I would be run for the hills." And I was like, this is what I've been looking for. I'm so happy that I got this. And it's like it shows how open you are when you're ready to be romanced. If a guy gives you a poem and you're running for the hills, that means you're in ego, that you're really defended against true love. Because when someone is coming towards you with their heart, your heart is open, you welcome it in. You don't find everything wrong with the guy and tear him apart and say he's too needy and
Hmm.
he's look for ways to kind of get out of it. You're going, "Oh, welcome home." Rumi says that if you want to be held, open your hands. It's like you have to be open to it. And the opening is really not just for another person, but the deeper parts of yourself. And that's where I see this spiritual journey and what Jung was talking about, back to the inner Adam or the inner Eve, as we call it, the anima animus, is that we're connecting with our own spirit. A woman is connecting to her deeper self so that she will feel safe with when she's out in the physical world, that she knows herself and that she's not going to get caught up and lost in it. And I think that, there's the teasing of romantic love, that we love the chase. We love that I can't have what I can't want. We want a taste of it. We want to take just a sip, but we don't want to take the full cup. And that's the spiritual journey, is when we take the full cup of ourselves, our hearts open to the full experience. And I, if anything ever happened to you, Rob, like if you ever left me, which I know you wouldn't do that, but if anything ever happened, God forbid, I don't feel, I feel like I know, I'll be okay. Like as far as like my soul, I mean, I'll miss you, but I feel like I would be able to be open again, to love again, and I'm sure you feel that same way too. It's just like the other person opens you up to the deeper parts of yourself where they're no longer just your survival. Does that make sense?
Right. So it sounds like you're saying that we don't need the other person. Essentially, we could do it on our
No,
own.
no. But I'm just saying you're not afraid of losing it.
Mm,
It's like I don't wake up every day going, "Oh my god, Rob's on a call with one of our pretty clients. He's going to leave me." It's not that kind
mm.
of, it's more that openness of being together and I don't know how to say it, but it's not that I would, yeah, I guess I'm saying it the wrong way. It's just that there's no neediness. That's what I'm trying to say. That it's like I don't feel
Well, yeah,
like all my everything is where I think when we fall in love, sometimes we
mm,
put all our survival onto that other person. We're projecting everything onto the other person. I'm saying I'm not projecting everything. I still have a part of myself.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't I didn't lose myself.
Right. Rilke says something like that. He says the real love is giving each other space, in a
Hmm.
sense, guarding each other's solitude.
Yeah,
Um, that because we
because I'm
are
not trying to
individuals,
control you.
right? Right. It's not about kind of the physical possession, but
Yes, that's what I mean.
yeah.
So I don't have that where, and before I did this work, I would always feel on edge all the time. Is he going to meet someone else? Is he going to, not you, but like other men I've dated, it's always like kind of feeling like it's very fragile.
Mm,
And this kind of like everything is about if this guy stays or leaves. My heart and security is dependent on someone else. Where in true love, it's like you, of course, you're going to care about the other person, but you're not putting everything on that person, and that's a burden for someone else, don't you think? That if I was always, it would be make our relationship miserable if I was constantly scrutinizing. Do you love me enough today? Did you love me today?
yeah, well, certainly there's that element of exclusivity in relationships, right?
Hmm.
The couple gets to a point where they say, "Okay, what are we doing here? Are we exclusive, or are we seeing other people and all that stuff?" So that has to be a little bit of that
Yeah.
possessiveness of of jealousy and all
Hmm.
that, um, but you're saying if
It's a
you're
balance,
if
though.
you're mature enough, and I say if you've done your spiritual work, you come at it from a, a higher perspective,
Yeah.
right? That it's not you're not using the love to fulfill your like ego needs,
Hmm.
your persona needs. You're not saying I just need a partner so that I can look good to my parents and
Yeah.
their expectations and all that stuff.
Or like emotionally, like what of course, if anything happened to you, I would like be devastated, that, but I'm saying that, but I still feel like I wouldn't die. I would survive because I knew I'm connected to
Mm,
myself, where I think a lot of women, they get so every little text, is he going to call back? Does he love me? Is he going to commit to me? Is he cheating on me? That kind of walking on eggshells. That's kind of that, we like that romantic like uncertainty, but that's not really going to help a relationship last. And I think having that kind of solidity within myself gives you freedom, gives the other person freedom, because the burden isn't on you every day to make me happy. You're not, it's
mm,
not always like, oh my God, Debbie, she's constantly needs reassurance. I need to tell her I love her 10 times a day for her to feel good. And that's not real love. Real love is giving that person space to love the way they want to love you. And then you love them the way and it's not that pressure, and it's the openness that I think is really important.
hmm.
But we can only do that if we're connected to our spiritual center or within ourselves. And that's the spiritual journey. It's an inward journey to connect, for a woman to her animus, and for a man to connect to his anima. And that's really where the deeper connection can be.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like another level of social definition of what romantic love is.
Hmm.
Because the old definitions, they seem to be based on like the 1950s and 60s, or before that.
Hmm.
The kind of the 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 specific role of a man and specific role of a woman which is it really doesn't apply anymore.
Mm.
The world is so different now, but there hasn't really been that catching up of the social structures
Mhm.
of relationships to make it work for people.
Mm.
You know, it seems like they're forcing it, right? People,
Yeah, they're forcing
uh,
themselves to say, "He's my soulmate, he's my best friend," and
yeah,
it feels like, in a way, like, sometimes I'll watch weddings and it'll just be like, they're kinda laying it on pretty thick there,
mm,
it's like this kind of like almost like the shadow of that, the opposite. And I think, again, a lot of people are projecting and when things go wrong or the husband does something wrong or the other person, they don't see their part in it. They don't see their projection, their own reflection of their assumptions in that.
mhm.
And so, yeah, I think it's, the the desire for love, we have that inborn in us. We have a divine right to have that expression romantically. We're built for it. And so we always say that the divine in you wishes to express itself. A desire is that divine wanting to express itself. So if you have a desire for love, that means on a deeper spiritual level, the divine in you, the spiritual aspect of you wants to have that experience. The problem is the ego takes credit and starts making stories up about how wrong you are because you don't have it. And that's really the battle that we're
Mm.
fighting, is we're waking ourselves up so we're not so putting so much pressure on the person that we're dating to fulfill where we feel like we lack.
So, could you, in theory, let's say, could anybody find spiritual fulfillment in relationship exclusively without, let's say, bringing in some psychology, some philosophy, some spiritual practice from the outside, or what's the deal there?
Well, I think there you need to go through a process of individuation, which what Jung talked about,
Mm,
which is you have to get your center of what you see in the world from that ego perspective, which wants security, safety, and no challenge, comfort, to willing to have find within yourself the courage to get your heart broken,
mm,
open up, that's not, that's what I was saying before. It wasn't that I don't care about you. It's just that I'm not afraid of getting my heart broken. There's this kind of like, I know I'll survive, where before I was very cautious. And I think, if you don't go through that process, you're going to pick either settle for less because you think, well, I'm 40 years old, I want to have kids, I'm going to just pick someone, and I'm just going to force myself to convince myself that I love this person, or you just avoid and keep avoiding relationships and avoiding relationships. And but you have to find a way, how do I transcend my ego self to step into who I really am? And that's the process of individuation. The first step is working, understanding the projections of your own personal history, your own shadow selves, and then connecting with the inner Adam, the deeper, the pure you, um, that you can bring into a relationship. And I'm telling you that when you go through this process, what happens is that um, you feel more confident naturally. You don't have to tell yourself, I'm confident and I'm good enough and I'm strong enough, and listen to tapes to tell you that. You actually become more confident. It's a natural confidence because you realize that you're connected to everything so much deeper, and your inner world becomes more finding some object out there to temporarily a man that is, the hard to get or lives far away, or, gets you excited and then lets you down. You start thinking, I want something real. And then you just feel it, a draw to someone who's more real. And you're
mm.
you're connecting from a different level. It's like your heart. Like I saw you with my heart. And I don't think I've ever had that experience before you. Is that I started seeing you with my heart. I mean, everything else was wonderful, but there was something like something like I could see inside of you, like,
Yeah,
that kind
yeah,
of feeling.
yeah.
Well,
Uh,
and I want to ask you a question, because a lot of the women ask, "What is your when you met me? What was your experience as a man meeting a woman?" Um,
what my experience in
yeah,
20 words or less?
yeah,
Um, I think it is a choice, but I had done some internal work.
Mhm.
And not that it's, let's say, internal work is not like learning something new,
Mhm.
or polishing up your persona and your resume and all that. Internal work is really difficult in the sense that you have to look at yourself and you have to be honest with yourself. And right before I met you, I was going through that process of individuation, what Jung calls individuation, which is often called the dark night of the soul. So you can imagine what it entails. Now, it is difficult, but it's also the way we grow. It
Mm.
is the spiritual life. You have to face everything you feel you've done wrong in your past. You bring it to the forefront and you say, what is this about?
You deal with it,
You deal with
take inventory.
it, or whatever it is,
Mhm.
you're going to have to deal with it, because if you push it away, what Jung says is you're creating this unconscious shadow
Mhm.
that is going to end up appearing externally. He
Mhm.
says the internal conflict that you repress becomes your external situation.
Mhm.
And sure enough, it was showing up for me in work and relationships and everything, because it was that splitting of this is who I am and I'm not the shadow. Push it
Mhm.
away. So the dark night of the soul entails facing all that, dealing with it. And in that process, you get in touch with your soul.
Mm. Your anima for a
For
man.
you, yeah, Jung would say that's the anima, the inner emotional core of your psyche that you're going to have to come in contact with sooner or later. He says what most men do is they expect, or they look for a woman who fulfills that aspect for them externally. So
Mhm.
it's like saying you handle the emotions in the relationship.
Mhm.
I'll just be the breadwinner, or I'll be the guy and all that, and you deal with the emotional part of it.
And the guy is for a woman, you give me stability, financial
Mm.
security. And I know this is kind of not modern, but we do unconsciously. We're looking for a success symbol versus a sex symbol. So go
Yes.
ahead.
Yeah. And so once you do that, then the relationships with a woman becomes very different,
Mhm.
because you,
Yes.
or to give you something, simply looking to express that.
And so when we connected, we kind of have this idea that people have this idea of soulmates.
Mm.
But what we're really seeing in them is our own, you're seeing your own soul through me, and I'm seeing my own spirit or deeper self through you. That's what true soulmate is that we have to find that connection. Conscious and this matter and spirit need to be aligned. So then that's going to make project the soul or the spirit on feel like there's an empty piece that I need to fill versus coming from a whole place and they're just reflecting that other side. And that's where I feel like when I met you, we were like, it was like unbreakable. Like it was like, because I can't separate myself from myself. So that you feel that kind of connection. And that's what I was trying to say before. Again, not that I would be devastated, I think happy, but it was like, I'm seeing that your wholeness in me, and I don't have that fear of what's Rob doing this week? And we work with a lot of beautiful women, and if it was the old me, I would be always worried um, and jealous of he likes this client. I wonder if he wants to date her, and I don't have that at all. Like I don't have any jealousy around you. And maybe because I know I'm so awesome, I don't know, but it's like that. Isn't it great to have that confidence that that like you trust me too. Like you're not always like worried. Like I'm on a business trip. I'm gonna,
Yeah.
cheat or
Life's too short to live like that.
yeah. So we want to feel that wholeness, and we want to feel that sense that we're connected to ourselves, and then that interconnection reflects it in our relationship. So this is a quick test for you. If you're dating and you feel triggered and anxious and fearful, you're an ego, you're not connected here. You're dating from ego. If you are dating from spirit, it feels as though everything that's showing up is your teacher. All the conflicts and the it's my spirit is showing me more about myself. And it really is that it's like you're working internally to reveal who you really are through the process. And then through that revealing who you are, you find your match out there that matches who you really are. And so
Mm.
it's the beautiful process. So we flip it on the side where a lot of people think, well, let me do the spiritual work and then I'll meet my partner. The goal is really to find your own spirit and then the partner appears, versus the goal is to do the spiritual work and then find the partner. And the reason I say this is because so many people I've talked to over the years, they've done a lot of personal development work,
Mm.
and a lot of them say, I'm so exhausted from doing all this work on myself. And if you're exhausted, if you feel tired, if you feel that you're frustrated, it's not that, I don't want to say you're doing it wrong, but you're approaching it in a correct way. You're approaching it as with attachment, and that's just going to lead you. It's almost like you're keeping yourself caught in a loop, which is causing more frustration. So there's something, your approach to what you're doing, like if you're approaching it in a fixing way, it'll never be enough. It'll never be enough. So whenever you feel caught or frustrated, I want you to take a step back, and you might not know what you're doing, but ask yourself, if I'm frustrated and caught, that means my ego's involved in this, and your ego will never lead you to true love. Your ego will never lead. It'll lead you to, good affairs and projections, but it will never lead you to true love. So if you're anxious, triggered, you're an ego. And if you're open, you're coming from a different place. So easy litmus test.
So you heard it here, folks.
This is it.
It's an internal journey. It's an
Yes.
inside job. You got to do your internal work first, your
Yes.
inner work.
And so we're going to
Um,
answer some questions. If you do the shadow work to see what's driving the repeated repeating, we have people writing down what we said, so I don't think that's a question. Okay, let's see. Here we go. We got a lot of questions here piling in. How do you know your destiny?
well, I think from our perspective, we would say that if you don't do anything, if you don't do internal work, then you're destined to play out your past
Mm,
conditioning,
yeah.
right? You keep repeating the patterns. And so in a sense you're playing out your destiny, your karma, your condition, and therefore you project that same pattern over and over.
Mm,
When you do the internal work, when you individuate, when you do that connecting process with your animus, with your inner Adam, you become free.
mm.
You essentially write your
You
destiny.
can consciously direct your destiny, consciously directed destiny. What if some women are just destined to remain alone for life? No one is destined to be alone unless they choose it. And most people, if you have a desire, again, if you have a desire for love, that desire is the divine in you wishing to express itself or herself through you. So if you have a desire for love, that means the divine in you has that same desire. The only thing that's stopping you is your ego, who wants to keep you in the sameness. So it's that
Mm.
inner battle, but through the ego's not bad. It's just kind of created conditions for you to survive. Your survival kit from early on in life, your emotional template that helped you survive early on. You have to understand what that is, understand its nature. You don't even need to change it. You just need to say, oh, that's my ego again being afraid. You recognize when the unconscious motivations are showing up, and then you're able to free yourself and again consciously create your destiny. Do you want to believe that you're destined to be alone? If you want to believe that that's your destiny, that will be your destiny. But if you say, you know what, I don't believe that's my destiny, then that your destiny will be love. It all comes down to what you choose to give energy to and what you believe. And a lot of times we're not conscious of it. So we have to check in when we get those results. What's the story we're telling ourselves? And for me, I kept saying, I'm just meant to be alone. There's no one out there that would love me. I kept saying that over and over. And that was my reaction. That was my response. That was what I kept getting. It was like digging myself in a hole, and I kept digging and digging it deeper. Need this today, feeling disappointed again from the latest breakup during a time when I'm
Mhm.
single and live alone and forced to stay at home after an employment with no contact with anyone. Yes. So you can begin today by creating that connection to your higher self, and you're doing the work, uh, because that's really the true work. We say work, but it really means the process of change.
Yeah, I think that that's the good news is that we're designed for this individuation process. In
Hmm.
other words, all
Yeah.
the elements are within us. We don't need to go anywhere or do anything fancy. It is simply a process of looking inward and examining. The
Mm,
Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. That's what he means. If you're not able to examine all that past history and really ask yourself, what does this mean for
mm,
me? Um, it's not worth living because you're going to repeat the same pattern. You've already essentially lived your life
mm,
and you're just going to repeat it. But if you're willing to do the work and even face heartache or the dark night of the soul, or you say, whatever I need to do, I'm going to do it because it's my life.
mm.
I want to look back and say it was a great life.
Yeah,
It was
and I lived
really.
it fully awake.
That's right.
I was thinking too that a lot of times, like I set on the journey to find love and then started doing the spiritual work to find love. And then I discovered myself, and I love having you in my life. But I think we all have to know that the real gift is knowing ourselves. That's really the goal. That's really like, I can't love you more if I was an ego. I wouldn't even be able to have this experience that I have if I was still an ego. So it's like, the awareness that we have helps us enjoy life more in more bigger ways and more grand ways, and we feel like we're not living in like scared little beetles, just like trying to survive. We're really grand
Little
beings.
beat.
Little, I don't know, I was just thinking little
That's a
mice.
good one.
Yeah, so it's like, that's the pattern, and a lot of women will say, well, how come it's hard for me? Like my sister, who's never done any personal development work, she looks happy, or this person looks happy. How come I have to do this work? We can't judge our insides compared to someone's outsides. We don't know what they're going through. They could be going to sleep every night saying, I can't stand my husband, but I'm going to go and put on Facebook that it's our fifth anniversary and I love him so much. Or they don't even know that
You're
they're on.
cynical, boy.
No, well, I'm just saying, like, we can't always, like, we think other people are as happy
Mhm.
as they are, and maybe they are happy in a way, but can they be happier if they were more aware or if they were more connected? I know a lot of people will tell me, they get into relationships and they're happy, they love their partner, but they feel like they're not really truly connected on a spiritual level. And so if I always say that, if you really want that deep connection, you're going to go the extra mile to get that versus settle. So, and again, there's nothing wrong with just having a, average marriage in life. But if you're on the spiritual journey, you want more than that. You want, like, that's not enough for you. So don't think of something's wrong with you. That's the bottom line.
It's always
Okay.
an opportunity.
Yes. So what if some women are just destined to remain alone? It's not that they pick men who are not a real match and men leave, but the relationships do not last due to death or other life
Mm.
circumstances, and it repeats throughout life. So one is alone most of her life. So that would be what we call the karma and not because she did anything wrong, but that was her belief. So if someone dies and then she believes that bad things happen to me, she will tend to repeat the pattern because that's what she believes on some level. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say that the
It's not
that
she's not destined like some other force is destining her. It's her own belief system that's creating it.
yeah, life is ultimately a spiritual journey, whether we acknowledge it or not. We
Mhm.
can definitely go all our lives and saying, well, it's just biology,
Mm,
right? Evolution got us here, and that's all there is. Whether you acknowledge it or not, there's a spiritual element to life.
mm,
And if you don't understand it, then it plays out and repeats, like we
mm,
were saying,
mm,
right? It's that karmic destiny
mm,
of replaying the same pattern. But if you do your work, then we see that it opens up.
mm,
We understand that we're the authors of our life. You know, in the beginning, we might say, "Okay, I'm co-creating life
mm,
with the universe." But the deeper we go into our spiritual life, we understand that no, I'm the one that's creating it. You know,
mm.
as I go deeper into my psyche, I understand and I see where everything fits. Even
Mhm.
stuff that I think, why did I experience that? You know, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It starts to make sense. It starts to fit into something bigger.
I always find that, the more aware you are, the less fear you have. So when we're born, our fear level's up here and our spiritual awareness is down here. And as we become more aware, we start to shift. And then our fears are just kind of, we want to protect our bodies and we want to be healthy. And, it's a lower level fear. And then we're so much bigger than our ego. And so the ego is like when it's in control, the fear is really high, the tension, the feeling separate from everything. I love the metaphor that they say in the Vedanta. They say that it's like a cork bobbing on the ocean, splashing by the waves. That's what the ego feels. But we're the ocean. And so making that shift going, we're not this little precarious little cork that's at the will of the world. We're forces of nature and we're powerful. And I think especially for women, we have more direct conscious contact to our soul than men do. They, you know, sorry, Rob, but
I
that's what they
agree.
say.
Oh.
We have more. We have. That's why we're more intuitive. That's why we're more
Yeah.
creative. We're the ones who came up with farming. If it wasn't for women, we give birth. I mean, there's so much power that we have, but society has made it that the women's and feminine power is weak in some way, when actually is we're very powerful. And so if we buy into this, a man is going to save us, this man, if he likes me, you're buying into that patriarchal system where if you say, I am a wonderful, powerful, soulful being, and I'm a gift to a man that comes in his life. I have power that he can't access except through me. How different would your dating life be, right? You would be in that divine connection. No, not from arrogance. You don't want to be this arrogant, but it comes with that knowing. Okay, question. Can you explain what it means to go through the individuation
Mhm.
process? What's the difference between going through the process, in quotes, or just listening to these talks and not really doing anything, but just listening on an intellectual level? Well, she said, it's helpful, but what's the difference
Yeah.
with actually going through the process?
Yeah, I think well, if you think about the dark night of the soul again, as let's say it's the beginning of the individuation process, as Jung explained it. It's a restructuring of the psyche. So
Hmm.
you go through a deconstruction,
Which
right,
is the shadow work.
by examining uh, all your conditioning, kind of the situations that have triggered you and
Hmm.
are triggering you in the present moment. They're really useful, and then they become a way for you to grow.
Mm.
They become your best teachers, like in some of the Zen people talk about, because they're showing you your unconscious mind, your
Hmm.
unconscious conflict.
So you start to see the external and the internal starting
Yes.
to connect, and then it builds it. It's a built-in self-awareness that happens just by seeing that.
Now, I would say that given, let's say, given the complexities of the psyche, of the mind, you do need a guide. And so
Hmm.
we always
You can't do it
recommend,
on your own.
yeah, we always recommend you get a coach to help you through the individuation process. And it is very different in that you're going to go through an intense period of transformation
Hmm.
where the the unconscious not the, let's say, the unconscious that people talk about as a
Beliefs.
computer program
Yeah.
or core beliefs, but the unconscious is a living process, an intelligence that lives within you and lives through you, it becomes activated,
Mhm.
and it literally helps you transform from the inside out.
Yeah, what I find is that people realize how powerful they are. They really get in touch with their own spiritual power by doing this
Mm.
process with a coach. I mean, it really is hard to do it on. I mean, I don't think you can do it on your own because your ego's fighting against it. So you need someone who's farther along in the process than you. People have gone to Jungian analysts for years to do this. But we decided we did it in a coaching model. We actually train coaches in our coaching model. Those of you who are interested in getting trained to do this with people, we do have our next class starting in June, just a little plug. But if you want to do it on yourself for love, we also have a program that you can work with one of our coaches and actually go through the process. And we start with the 4 love personas, where you identify that pattern of persona, which is your surface self, that those
Mhm.
survival mechanisms, and then what's the shadow in that, and then you start really connecting to and making yourself whole again through that process. So if you're interested, just post below like, hey, I'm interested, I want to talk to someone, in your comments, and one of the mentors will hop on the phone with you and tell you a little bit about the process, give you a little taste of it if you're interested. I also have I could post here the love persona test, which is the first step to individuation, is understanding your persona, which is what's the outer shell of what you're putting out there, and then we go inward from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a process, and it doesn't have to take long. Like, because I've had people who I've worked with, and in a few months they met their partner, and other people it takes longer. It's just because they're kind of wanting to explore more, and they're
They're more stubborn.
and then some people are more resistant, of course, but it doesn't have to take
Yeah.
years to do. The process is a lifelong process, but the process to shift just a little bit, it's like just a tiny little percentage in your psyche of switching. It's like kind of turning on that, oh, I'm seeing my mind. Once you really get it, it starts to happen really quickly. It's the people that keep projecting that have a harder time because they're still saying, but you don't understand, Debbie. The guys out there are bad, or there's not enough men in my town, or I keep getting this result, but they're not self-reflecting. Or the opposite, where they self-reflect so much that they're blaming themselves for all the bad things that they're creating and its attachment. So that's why you need a coach, because you want someone to help you self-correct, self-correct, self-correct as you're seeing
Mm.
what you're experiencing in the right way. And so it's like waking you up every time you have a coaching session. So it's a beautiful process. Okay, how do you find true love? Well, it finds you. True love is already within you, so you have to find that process
Mm.
of understanding that what is love really? It's not that romantic and flowers, but it's a connection to who we really are, the divine in
It's
us.
yeah, I like this definition. It's the ability to give and receive love.
Ah, perfect. How will I know if I'm in the right relationship? Again, that's the same thing. Is there an easy giving and exchanging of love with each other? That would be the right relationship. If you feel like you have to give all the time, then it's out of balance. If you feel like they're giving to you and you're like,
Mm.
hey, slow down, mister, it's not that it's not the right relationship, but there's something in you that's stopping you from receiving. So it should be that balance. How do you work with logos? That's the animus for women. And we have a process that you can actually, we have meditations and dream interpretation and all that help you get in touch with that animus. But initially, you could look at who are the men that you're attracting right now. They're reflecting that inner you. Who do you fall in love with? That you're seeing that logos out there in the world. But yeah, we have programs to help you work with that if you want to go deeper with that. How does a man work with eros? The same process.
A same process, but it's kind of uh, a mirror image of what a woman does.
Hmm.
Um, we we men, I think, we, Most of our activity is external, like our
Mhm.
senses are pointing outward into the world,
Mhm.
right? We're always going off into war or work or something. And so a lot of the work for men is, can I look inward? Can I focus on what's going on inside?
Is it more like them connecting with their emotions more?
Well, that's part of it,
Yeah.
but what are emotions, right?
Yeah.
It's the unconscious
Mhm.
essentially. So it's getting in touch with the unconscious element.
Mm.
I mean, in that regard, it's the same
Mhm.
that a woman has to get in touch with her unconscious
And there's
too.
3 ways to do this. First, you have understanding, that, working with the emotional triggers that you have in your
Mm,
life, that's one of the ways. Working with visualization, where you visualize symbolically this, animus, if you're male or female, you're looking and watching for symbols, and it's, what Jung called active imagination. And then the third way is through dreams. And so all you can use all three, you can use one of them, but the third one with the dreams is the most powerful because your ego's kind of out of the way a little bit, and you're seeing more of the unconscious showing you and symbolizing to you where you're off base, what's really happening on the unconscious level. So it really is a deep unconscious work, but not in the same way of like reprogramming. It's more, let me go deeper into my soul. There's this wisdom within us, this intelligence within us, and through dreams, visualization, and working with these emotional triggers, we get to access that deeper intelligence, and then that's where we feel secure in our decision when we meet someone, because we know ourselves so well. We know what's our ego and what's not, and we make better decisions as far as going through repeating old patterns. Or I was actually about to make a decision in business, and I checked in, and I know myself so well. I'm like, this feeling is how I made decisions before that led me in the wrong way.
mhm,
And so I say, I'm just not going to do that. And then I went, after a while, like, the emotion went away. I was like, oh, I could see it clearly now. It was that pattern that was pulling me. And so that's the power you have. You know yourself so well that you're like, oh, there's that ego again. It wants me to go and bite the hook again. And then we end up picking the same guy again, or going for the same, throwing money at things that you shouldn't throw money at, and all these ways of coping that we if you understand the survival kit that you've been given, you can start outside of it. What is the way of interaction for whole people in relationships? I've been broken my whole life and have recently started my journey on being whole, and I realized, how do whole people interact? I understand that it's not a needy place, but what does that look like on the first few dates? Um, it feels as though, I mean, you're still gonna feel like, when I met Rob, I still felt a little like, I wonder if he's gonna call, but it wasn't overwhelming. It was more, just I felt groundedness. So I guess from a whole place, again, you see that the other person's reflecting your mind. They're your teacher, and you're not going, how can I capture him and make him commit to me and lock it in? I had more of an openness to, let me discover who this person is, why he came into my life. It feels really good. And it was more in the moment, don't you think? Like, then, like, oh my God, I'm gonna marry her tomorrow. Although I know you probably thought that. You met me.
when you know, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really the heart, what people call the heart. But what is the heart, right? It's this ineffable sense of life, right?
Mhm.
How am I in this moment? How do I
Mhm.
feel? That's the heart, right?
Mhm.
We're experiencing our heart. And when you, let's say, when you're open, when your heart is open, then the universe shows you who you are, and the love that's in your heart, like you said.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like, when I was secure, with you, if my mind started going, where is this going? That's when the ego would click in, because the ego is always looking for that certainty, that security. But when I was just with myself and my soul, I didn't ask those questions. I just knew that it was going to be we
mhm.
were going to be together. And so the ego will try to sneak its way back in and go, ooh, maybe you should talk to him about commitment, or, and the fears will come up. But it's about managing that part of your mind and understanding, oh, that's that old voice again that's trying to sabotage and sneak in.
Yeah, because if you approach love from the ego is always looking for a bigger, better deal.
Yeah.
You know, The
That's true,
the
and,
BBD.
yes, and like what so you're gonna meet, when are you committed, when are you gonna have sex, when you're gonna live in together, when you're gonna get married, when you're gonna have kids. It's always looking for that next milestone, and those milestones are false, metrics of how this person feels about you. And so all these dating rules that say if he doesn't call after 3 days, that means this. You got to throw all those rules out, and you got to go inside and be like, stop putting directives on this other person that you have to follow what I assume is the proper way of being. Not that, you want to throw everything out the window, but it's like kind of like a lot of people have these assumptions that if he really cared, he would do X, Y, and Z without even communicating to that person. And then they have this kind of dark, image of the other person in their mind, and they're just projecting again.
Yeah, and if you're clear on who you are,
Hmm.
life will reflect that.
Hmm.
It will show you the things that belong with you or belong to you or you belong to them, whatever way you want to see it. It's like a universal rule.
So we did talk about how do we know each other? We're the one.
Mm.
So we talked about that. A lot of questions. Why is my ego protecting me? I have the deepest desire to find true love. If you've been single all your life, isn't it a sign that something hasn't been healed? Um, it means that you're highly guarded. It's not healing, like it's not something's broken. It's actually the function of a healthy ego is to be protective and to keep you in the same pattern. So I wouldn't say see yourself as broken or unhealed. What you need to do is find out, why are you pushing love away? It feels as though on a conscious level you have a deeper desire, and believe me, I would argue with anyone who said I didn't want love badly. But what I realized is that I was pushing love away. I was terrified of finding love, of being intimate with someone, because I was so afraid that they would reject me, that I kind of created this kind of not let them get too close at all, So I had very short-term relationships. And and I was always single, but I would argue with you till you were I was blue in the face that says I want love, I want love, I want love. And then it was when that was I think when everything changed, when I realized, oh wait, I've been like so guarded against love. I'm the one who's been guarded. And then when you get to that point, that self-awareness, that's when everything's going to change.
That's one of the things that a lot of people have difficulty with, understanding that there can be different dynamics in the psyche,
Mm.
that one part of you might want love and be
Yeah.
sure that that's what they want, and another part be completely opposing that and stopping you from creating that.
I know a lot of people will say, I already like I know this, and I know my patterns, and so I should be clear to find love. Like I've done all my work, and it's like, but it's that unconscious piece that we don't see. And believe me, I did personal development for a long time, and I was rearranging the furniture most of the time. I was building up my ego maintenance, and I was trying to fix this little, very superficial part of myself versus knowing who I really like, connecting to my
Mm.
spirit in a real way. I was using spiritual work, and this is really important too, to escape. It's like, oh, this other place, heaven and spiritual realm is where I want to be, and then this human life is so painful. You have to integrate it. You have to be a spiritual being in the physical world. You have to have that unconscious and conscious merge, and that's what Jung's work is about. It's not about running away or putting a glow around you and protect you. That's ego.
Mm.
This true spiritual work is, there's nothing to fear. You're fearless. You know that you're part of the whole. That you're connected to everything. When I realized my divine knowing that I do not need a man to protect and save me, my love life died. Men kind of
That
became.
that sounds like ego.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like divine. Yeah, it sounds like escape, right?
Yes. Anything we push away, because a lot of people think, okay, if I'm needy, that's not good, right? It's showing
Mm,
that my ego's caught up. But if you push it away, if you deny it, that's also ego.
yeah.
It's just simply going to the other extreme. The
Your
other,
results are showing you your mind.
yes. And so there's nothing wrong with the ego. The ego is a natural function that all of us are born with. It helps us. It protects us. The let's say the work is about understanding that we're over identifying with ego.
Mm,
We think that's who we are, and that
mhm.
it's telling us something true and real about who we are and what's available to us in the world.
And I could tell you what you did, and a lot of people make this mistake, is that I don't need a man to protect me. Then you flip it. So the opposite side of the
Hmm.
coin is I don't need a man at all. And that's what you're creating. So that's the assumption that there's a false assumption that a man's job is only to protect you. And that's all that they serve. And so you dropped the other needs that a man can bring to your life. And so that's what I guarantee if you took the test, you'd probably show up as a mystic persona. And they kind of like give away the material and they just give, it's like a bargain. Like, I'm going to be spiritual and I'm going to give away money and love and all those things because I want a spiritual life. And a true spiritual life incorporates all of everything, include abundance and romantic love and sex and um, health and friendships and eating delicious food and all those things. Like, we want to have both. What if the relationships end in death of a partner? Then it is a reality, not a projection of the shadow.
Right. What we want to know
Lots of
is,
questions here.
how do we react to that? How do
Hmm.
we respond to that? Right. I
Hmm.
mean, we all react, but we want to get to the point where we can respond to life.
Hmm.
And we know we're going to lose people, right? It's part of
Part of life.
it's part of life, part of nature, the way it works. The question is, how do we see it? Do we
Hmm.
see it as the end of our life, that life betrayed us, or some people curse God, curse the universe, curse the
Hmm.
world?
Hmm.
But it's nature, right? It's the
Hmm.
way things work, and it gives meaning that we're not here forever.
Hmm.
It gives meaning to the moment.
Hmm.
It's really what gives it that incredible intensity.
Hmm.
So let's say,
It's how you respond to the death and the stories you
that's
say
right.
about it is what's in your shadow, not the actual death itself. As I think a lot of people misinterpret the projection is not actually sometimes directly reflecting what's in the unconscious. It's kind of what's underneath.
Yes, what will reflect back to you is your emotional reaction to it,
Yes.
and that's what you learn from. Like,
Hmm.
what does this mean?
So again, the woman with the redundant men, she went too far and needs some reversing. Yeah, I want to just add one more thing about that. That I need a man and I don't need a man are like two sides of a coin, and they both make the assumption that men have power. They have the power to
Mm,
protect me, and I don't need them anymore, so they don't have anything. So it's like that's again that defense. Like, you're actually giving men power by pushing them away. And it feels like your ego saying, I don't need them, right? That on a conscious level, they're redundant, but on a deep level, it's like a fear, And so
mm,
you have to get to what really need to get to is, why am I afraid of men? Why am I afraid of being in a relationship? And so and it's not a simple answer. A lot of people think, I was thinking about this today, that the process of change isn't this one idea
mm.
that's going to, I'm going to have this one breakthrough and then everything, I'm going to have one coaching call with someone and it's going to change everything. Now it does happen. Like, there is a turning point, where it just snaps and there's a shift, but you have to have these little awarenesses and little shifts to get to that big one. It doesn't just happen in one fell swoop, unless you're in a very intense, like dramatic situation where you're like in a plane crash or something, that you can have a spontaneous transformation. But for most of us, it's that kind of, it's like those little things that prepare you for the big thing, and then usually the big thing that shifts everything is something so tiny, and the big thing in the beginning that you work with is like kind of moves you a little bit, and then once you get to, it's like a chain reaction, it starts to flow. So one another thing about being on the spiritual journey is, stop looking for the quick fix. Stop looking for that all in one answer, and then this is my issue, and then you got yourself, this is what happens. People like, I know why I'm single, and now I just have to fix this. And you're blocking yourself off from all the other insights and inspiration that you can be getting and connections to your journey. Okay. Okay. If someone frequently asks for reassurance, is this always a projection from me?
If if someone is asking for reassurance from
Yeah.
you, uh, again, check in on what does that pull from you. If it
Mhm.
triggers you, if there's a strong emotional reaction, then use it to grow.
Mm.
Right? It's teaching you a lesson. If you can see it as, okay, I can see why this is happening or why this
Mm.
person is that way, and it doesn't really trigger you that much, then you're okay.
Mm.
It's just circumstances.
Okay. Oh, the girl said, I said, you're probably a mystic. She says she got the professional as the highest score. That's interesting. So you're approaching spiritual work from a logical standpoint, then, from a very practical standpoint versus that mystical escape. So, yeah, so maybe that's something to look at. It's like, are you engaging emotion and passion in your spiritual work? Okay, I think that's it. Some people want the test. I'll post that in later. Um, yeah, we hope you enjoy this talk. Very deep topic. We went a little over, a little over, but that's okay. We will be here. Actually, next week we're not going to be here because we have another class with our coaches. So we're training our love coaches next Saturday. So we will not be here in the group. We'll be on another intensive event, but we'll be back in 2 weeks for our
Yeah.
souls sessions. Let us know what you think if you're listening to the replay. Hello, we missed you today. Post your questions here. We'll still be checking them, and let us know how we can serve you. If you want to find out more about coaching, let us know. If you want to get a coach, we have plenty of coaches that can help you out. Even Rob and I have coaching, offer coaching as well. If you want to work directly with us, we invite you to the journey, the spiritual journey to love, and know it's a beautiful journey, and you win in the end because you not only find yourself, but you also have that partner at the same time. And that's really the gift, is not just putting all the energy on just another person. It's you're finding yourself, and that's really
Mhm.
the wonderful part of the work.
Yeah. Thank you for all the great questions, and thanks for hanging out with us.
Have a
St-
happy Saturday.
Stay well, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Take care.